Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that hits incredibly close to home, and frankly, it's a little bit unsettling. We are talking about the hidden dangers lurking right inside our own social circles. Think about the people you text every single day, the ones you grab coffee with, the people you trust with your deepest secrets. Have you ever walked away from a conversation with one of them feeling just completely drained, or confused, or suddenly doubting yourself, but you just can't quite put your finger on why?
Okay, let's dive into this. It's a tough question, right? Is your closest friend secretly manipulating you? Look, we all naturally want to believe the absolute best about the people we let into our lives. But sometimes, those lingering feelings of confusion or guilt, they aren't just accidents. Sometimes, they are the direct result of someone subtly, quietly pulling your strings behind the scenes. As we go through this explainer, I want you to really reflect on your own friendships and ask yourself if you've ever felt subtly controlled by someone you implicitly trust.
To really grasp how this happens, we need to talk about something called dark psychology. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That sounds like the title of a true crime thriller, right? But the reality is, this isn't just a playbook for hardened criminals. Dark psychology is the study of human nature's predatory side, how people manipulate, coerce, or victimize others. And, unfortunately, it's the exact same set of tools that toxic friends use to exploit you in everyday life.
Think of it this way. Normal psychology, the kind we usually think about, is all about understanding behavior so we can connect, heal, and basically live in harmony. But dark psychology, it completely flips the script. It takes that exact same understanding of human behavior and uses it for predatory exploitation. So while a true friend uses their knowledge of you to lift you up, a dark manipulator uses it to map out your vulnerabilities so they can weaponize them against you.
Here's the really wild part. A manipulator's very first goal is actually to understand you. I mean, deeply understand you. They're going to listen to your fears, your insecurities, your biggest dreams. They build this incredibly intense, comforting level of trust. But here's the catch. That connection isn't genuine empathy. It's data collection. They're figuring out exactly how you operate so that eventually they can start pulling your strings without you even noticing. It's literally understanding you just to control you.
Section 1. The Dark Triad. Profiling the threat. So who exactly are these people? How do we put a face to the manipulator in our own friend group? Now, what's really interesting about this is how we can break down the 3 specific traits that make up this toxic profile, which psychologists call the dark triad. First up, we have Machiavellianism. This is just ruthless self-interest and strategy. It's that friend who's constantly calculating how does this benefit me, all while keeping up a flawless public image. Next is psychopathy. And forget the movie monsters here. In real life, this just looks like superficial charm, completely lacking in actual empathy or remorse. And finally, narcissism. You know the one, an inflated sense of superiority, an exhausting need for constant praise, and zero ability to handle even the mildest criticism. If you've ever felt completely drained by a friend who always puts themselves first, trust me, your experience is entirely valid. And get this is a truly shocking piece of data. 99.99% of these manipulators are acting with a specific, selfish goal in mind. Literally only a tiny fraction, 0.01%, cause harm for absolutely no reason. What that means is your toxic friend almost always has a highly rational motivation for what they're doing. They aren't just being difficult by accident. They are intentionally trying to gain power, attention, resources, or control over you. The whole thing is purposeful. Section 2. Tactics of toxic friends. So, what does this actually look like in everyday life? Let's transition into the specific day-to-day methods these toxic personalities use to execute their agendas right under our noses. Honestly, these are probably going to sound a little too familiar. First, they put you down, but they cleverly disguise it as friendship, right? I'm just being honest with you, or I'm just trying to help. Then there's isolation, where they slowly, methodically cut you off from other loved ones who might actually see through their act. They'll use the silent treatment to punish you and make you squirm until you finally cave. And of course, backstabbing and triangulation. This is where they feed you false info about what others are supposedly saying, creating all this drama and forcing you to rely solely on them. But what about when they aren't actively coming at you? Well, that's when they pulled from the passive-aggressive toolkit. You see, manipulators rarely just admit fault. Instead, they use these incredibly subtle physical cues.
knitting the eyebrows, grinding the teeth, tutting, smirking, or just slowly shaking their head when you speak. It is masterfully designed to express strong disapproval without them ever having to say a single word, completely undermining your confidence and making you feel inferior in the moment. Section 3. The art of gaslighting. This next tactic requires us to really pay attention because it is by far the most insidious form of covert manipulation. That did not just happen. When a friend looks you dead in the eye and flat out denies a reality you both literally just experienced, it is deeply jarring. And they do this for one simple reason: to completely shield themselves from any accountability. And this brilliantly illustrates the very next step in their trap. You imagined it. See what they did there? They just subtly shifted the blame away from their own toxic actions and dropped it directly onto your memory and your perception. Are you insane? Wow. This rapid-fire sequence of phrases, it isn't just a regular argument. It's a calculated weapon, and it's designed to break down your confidence entirely. This right here is gaslighting. It is a deliberate tactic aimed at completely distorting and eroding a person's sense of reality, ultimately destroying their ability to trust themselves. The sources detail how a gaslighter will withhold information, counter your facts by telling you your memory is flawed, divert the conversation straight to your shortcomings, and even discredit you to others by claiming you're acting crazy. Over time, the really scary part is that you stop trusting your own eyes and ears, and you start relying entirely on the manipulator to tell you what is real. Section 4. The mental toll. Going through this kind of psychological ringer with someone you actually consider a friend, it's absolutely devastating. We have to acknowledge the deep emotional wounds that victims of this abuse carry, because the mental toll is incredibly heavy. Victims begin constantly doubting their own reality and their own sanity. They start choosing silence over communication simply because speaking up always leads to being punished or invalidated. They live in this state of constant anxious tiptoeing, just absolutely terrified of setting off their friend's temper. And they often fall into extreme perfectionism. They harbor quiet resentment, sure, but they desperately seek approval just to keep the peace. It is just an exhausting, draining way to live. Section 5. How to protect yourself. Okay, let's move forward and see how this builds into something positive, because you absolutely do not have to stay trapped in this cycle. Let's pivot from the problem to some actual empowering defense strategies based on the psychology we've just unpacked. First up, maintain a healthy distance. If a friend is showing these extreme, two-faced behaviors, step back. Just create some space. Second, probe the manipulator. Ask them highly analytical questions like, does what you're asking me to do actually seem fair to you? This effectively holds a mirror right up to their ploy. Third, give them an out to save face and drop the game. Try saying something like, you seem uncharacteristically pessimistic today. Is everything okay? And most importantly, above all else, trust your own reality. When you know what happened, hold on to it like an anchor. So, the crucial point is this. You are the only one who needs to validate and approve of yourself. You are enough, just as you are. You must never, ever allow a so-called friend to make you feel small, deficient, or unworthy just so they can get a little power trip. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to carry with you today. Take a real, hard look at the people you spend your time with. Are you surrounded by true friends who want to see you thrive in harmony? Or are you unknowingly sharing your life with master manipulators? Trust your instincts, reevaluate your circle if you need to, and always protect your peace. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.